it was definitely an opening experience to try new things, to take things into cool places, and do that genre mashup of, exploitation, grindhouse, uh, Mexican mysticism and mythology and all of that, and kung fu, and wrap it up into this cool new animated thing.
Welcome to Film Forums. I'm Sebastien Tobler, and today I'm very excited to have writer, showrunner, and producer Álvaro Rodríguez speaking with us today. Álvaro, welcome. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Sebastien. I appreciate the opportunity.
So I guess the first thing I always ask is, especially for writers, I remember as a kid, it's like you don't really know how things are made; they're just made, and you just kind of want to do that. But growing up, did you always want to write for in general, or for TV or film specifically?
I mean, I guess I knew from a pretty early age that you could write stuff. Like when I was in the second grade, I had a toy typewriter and I wrote like this, the SNL news thing, kind of something like that. And it was like a parody of that, and wrote little skits and things like that. But somehow in my mind, that never sort of translated as like, oh, I could grow up and do this as a profession. I could go and write for TV or movies or whatever stuff. But I was aware of the movies and television existed. I was a huge fan of movies, and TV too, especially at that time, and reading and stuff like that. So yeah, I was definitely the kid who wanted to be a writer, but there was still some kind of a disconnect in my brain where it's like, I could be this for real. It was almost like pretending in a way.
Was there a particular film or television show or literature or somebody that you encountered that kind of brought that out?
I think the time that really, really, really finally clicked was when my cousin Robert Rodriguez made a film called Mariachi, and I did some music for the film. I had gone to school with Robert, and even though we grew up several hours away from each other, we ended up going to the same Catholic boys boarding school in San Antonio. I was there as a resident. He lived across the street, so he was just a day student, a couple of years ahead of me. But basically, my first 2 years there were his last 2 years there, and then we both ended up at the University of Texas at Austin, and even lived together for a while. And so there was a lot of time where I was very immersed in Robert, the emerging filmmaker who was transitioning from making films on video, VHS or whatever, to Robert getting into film classes and making films on 16 millimeter stock, and then Robert who made El Mariachi. And then right after El Mariachi was starting to get Robert on the map, he's like, we need to write something together. And so I co-wrote first script with him. And that was where it just felt like, oh, this is possible now. The door is opening. I got to get my foot in that door as quickly as I can.
That's amazing. Is that where your sort of attraction to NeoWestern Grindhouse, that genre, is that where it came from, or was that later on?
Part of it, I guess, came out of that boarding school experience. During the year, one of the students actually ended up working at a movie theater that was like a second run theater there in San Antonio. And so we would go to the movies all the time and get to see these great schlocky movies of the 80s. And so I think there was always like the idea that this stuff is schlocky and fun, but then you start to find, I don't know, gems and bigger, sort of like deeper things in them. And so it was always like a treasure trove for me to kind of dig into that.
And so, okay, so you're writing with your cousin, who is obviously such a big name in the indie filmmaking world, in film world today, obviously. But then you made your journey into television, and then now you're show running. So what was that like? Was it always a conscious thing at that point? Like, okay, I've done features, let's try different format?
I never had even really seriously considered television because I felt like I didn't have those opportunities because I wasn't in Los Angeles. And it was only by kind of coming to LA, kind of getting boots on the ground and being in the place where the opportunities were going to be at, that it opened the door to that. And so that started happening in 2013, but I wasn't fully in Los Angeles until full-time 2017. And that's when I wrote a pilot. I got hired. That got me on Chicago Fire. I was on Chicago Fire for a hot minute and got Chicago fired, is my joke. And then went back to Seis Manos, which we had been developing. And a couple months later, sold it to Netflix. So, that was the process. And yeah, I mean, I now it feels like television is the place, and streaming and cable and all of these network. That's where all the opportunities are, and that's a place I'm really happy to be able to do that, and have also done features and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen it? Have you seen changes in the makeup? I mean, obviously, you were saying that it's 2017 we were getting into writers' rooms. Have you seen changes in the makeup of the writers' room since then? I know there's been a lot that's happened over the past 5-7 years.
I feel like for diverse writers, there's never been as many opportunities as there are right now. It doesn't mean that there's not still room to grow, particularly as you get higher up the ladder in terms of your position in the room and your status. But at the same time, I feel like that's kind of where we are right now. We're in this time of change, but it's also a time of progress. And I think that it's been great to see it and to be a part of that. And I think that we've just the proof is out there. We've seen more diverse storytellers telling more diverse stories, and I think that's always a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Seis Manos is all of it. It's like what's amazing, and I kind of want to talk about how you got into animation.
A friend of mine, Karl, who is a composer and does film scores and things like that, worked a lot with Robert. Was involved because he was going to score this little teaser proof of concept thing, and he said, these guys are really looking for a writer to help kind of like shape this thing and whatever. So that when I came on board, there was a concept, but there really wasn't a full story, and so I came on board, started kind of fleshing things out, had a few sessions with Brad, and then kind of like brought a lot of my ideas to the table, and then wrote a pilot and shopped that around for a while, and didn't really get much of a response for a long time until late 2017, when we partnered with Viz Media and then went to Netflix and got a green light for production.
And the reception just culturally has been massive. I've been reading such great reception from it.
It's like, I always feel like there's a pendulum that swings one way and it swings the other way. And one way is original content and the other way is IP. And we got really lucky in that Seis Manos was born when the pendulum was swinging towards original content. And even Netflix's campaign at the time when it was released was anime is global stories. So we could tell all kinds of things. It wasn't just something that needed to originate in Japan and in the Japanese space. And but at the same time, it's like it's a show that I think had found an audience, but it's hard to kind of gauge how big that audience is. I feel like, it's a show that I'm incredibly proud of, and was, have had great experience working with everyone involved in that process, from the actual animators at Powerhouse to my co-writers like Daniel Dominguez and Brad and the director Willis Bulliner, and it's just been it was a great experience. And so it's something that I think the hope is that it can still help open some more doors for more things in that space.
As a writer, was it more liberating to be able to write for animation? It feels like there's just fewer restrictions, obviously, keeping in mind a production, etc. Did you get that sensation?
It was definitely an opening experience to try new things, to take things into cool places, and do that genre mashup of, you know, exploitation, grindhouse, Mexican mysticism and mythology and all of that, and kung fu, and wrap it up into this cool new animated thing.
You know how in theater you're writing to the audience, and television and screenplay it's rewriting to camera. For animation, is it kind of like you're writing for the animator in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, that was the thing. You have to write just enough for them to get a sense of what it is that they're drawing, what they're building, you know. And there's so many layers to it, just like there would be for a film, I guess, from set design to props and things like that. But it was also a good experience to just recognize that it's like, you know, I'm not Charles Dickens. I don't need to like give you every detail in a thing. Leave something for the animators, leave something for them. I'm also not a fight choreographer, so I can have ideas and stuff in there, but it's really skeletal and very much a roadmap, and let these incredibly talented people do what they can do and bring their own creativity to that process too. So it's a balance. You find the right kind of thing, at least in my experience. It's kind of worked that way.
I guess what I'd love to learn from your experience is what do you think you need to have before you get to that place? Because I feel like a lot of us just want to just get there, right? Have that overnight thing. And obviously that's not how it works, but what do you think that is that you need to bring to the table once you get to a position where you can put together a show and then take it to market?
You know, I think ultimately it kind of comes down to, can you play well with others? You really do have to play well with others. This is a very collaborative art form. I always say it's the most collaborative art form that there is. And so you need to have that sort of spirit of collaboration. I think that's really important. And then I think, you know, it's like, there's also an element of the showrunner, which is you're like the coach or the coaching staff, the owner of a team, and you're trying to bring together the best people to work with, because you want the best people around you so that they can elevate everything that we're doing together. People that work well together. And working well together does not mean a bunch of people who just say, oh my God, everything is so great. You want people who work well together to say, like, we need to do better. We need to challenge ourselves to make this as good as we can make it, and not leave anything behind. You know, you want people to challenge. You want to challenge people, and you want people to challenge you, because together we're going to build better monsters that way.
Looking ahead, TV landscape, film landscape, what's exciting you these days?
You're always looking for those possibilities that exist around you, but you're also really cultivating ways in which you're creating your own opportunities. And I think that's the biggest sort of like, that's a really important lesson, as you were saying earlier, about like things that define showrunners, or things that people need to do before they're prepared to get really deeper into the business or to have any kind of measurement of success, is that you're creating opportunities for success. That's the biggest, you know, you're creating the conditions for success.
Well, I know for a fact that I and many in the writing community are very excited to see what you get into, as always.
So,
and so I want to thank you so much again. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to our subscribers and our viewers. And yeah, I hope we get a chance to do this again in the future.
Great. I hope I'll come back when I'm sure running my own show again.
All right. Thanks, Álvaro.
Take care.